So thank you everyone for coming here today. We're going to be going through our content marketing process that we have refined for the last 4 years or so. So if everyone knows that their generative AI timeline, this is roughly when OpenAI released their endpoints, and we've been playing and using those at our agency for the past 4 years. So we've gone through a few learnings along the way. And we refine this process for our clients that happen to be different startups as well as different businesses that are looking overall at scaling their marketing efforts and augmenting them. So we're going to walk you through our current process and walk you through exactly how we do it, what we do to be able to scale up content production and have consistency and being able to write high quality content that ranks on Google. So we've already gone through the poll. Thank you everyone for completing the poll. I am Hamid Azarian. I've been a lifelong learner focused on growth for most of my career. I've been working with venture-backed startups for well over 12 years or so. In the process, initially as a consultant coming in and helping build out their go-to-market teams and their growth marketing teams. About 4 years ago, I started Azarian Growth Agency, helping additional startups as well as small and medium-sized enterprises to help scale their go-to-marketing strategies. Overall, our world or our ecosystem includes our Growth Academy, which we train and develop and build the next generation of growth marketers, and in addition to partnering with different selected VC-backed startups that we provide growth teams for. We have our Growth Lab series, which is what you're attending today, which is our monthly webinar series where we highlight and showcase the different innovative techniques that we're using at our agency and across our portfolio companies and helping them develop go-to-market strategies. We have our Growth Ventures podcast where we interviewed different founders and VCs, well over 20 plus different podcast episodes that we've already aired that include prominent VCs and founders and talking about leadership and how they build and scale their companies and organizations. And then we have Azarian Growth Agency, which is obviously our agency itself, where we develop dedicated teams for different clients of ours that we can pretty much their go-to-market strategies. So overall, we've done 6 different Growth Lab webinar series. This is our 7th. Our last one was incredibly popular, where we talked about generative AI. And we focused exactly on where Google's headed, and we reviewed their patents and discussed how we have been scaling overall content production and really future-proofing SEO strategies for our clients. With that popularity, what we heard in that one, which we had close to 500 people in attendance, they wanted to learn exactly how we go about scaling content production, which is what this webinar is about. So we're going to break down the process and how we actually do it so you guys can take away from hopefully some lessons learned here and be able to apply it in your current content production process. So what will we cover today? How do we produce content through AI? How do we ensure that it's quality content that has consistency in brand voice, speaks to the customer persona, all elements of that? And then how do we go about repurposing AI content? And then lastly, we'll leave some room for questions and answers. For everyone here in attendance, we'll also be giving you a bunch of different blogs and also a copy of the video recording at the tail end of this webinar. So thank you for attendance. So first, just one interesting stat. There's 6 million blog posts are being published every single day now across 1.9 billion global website. That's a ton of content being produced, and we expect this to continue to accelerate as most people become much more comfortable using AI and being able to use this within their content production cycle. So this is real hardcore stats from us when we were measuring overall our content production process. So prior to generative AI, we looked at overall how long it was taking us to produce content, and we broke it down in this graph where we were spending about 30 minutes or so in ideation, 60 minutes in research, 30 minutes in outlining, about 2 hours or 120 minutes or so writing, another hour or so in editing, and then lastly, another 2 hours or so in distribution. And what we've really seen is the overall change for us has been that the content production cycle has allowed us to move less into writing. And it looks like this graph is wrong, so I apologize for that. But it's really what has happened is writing time has gone down, ideation has gone up, and distribution is what's really expanded for us. So a couple things in regards to content production as a whole. According to Google, and this is part of the Google search guidelines, it's Google doesn't necessarily care if you use AI generated content, right? So they're more interested in the quality of the content and how, not necessarily how the content itself is produced. And also, as recently as the recent leak that just occurred on Google, and if you guys are not aware of this, Rand Fiction did an incredible blog article from an anonymous user initially, but later on came open. And his name is Irfan Azimi, where they released a GitHub API endpoints of all the different ways that Google is tracking user behavior and using potentially all elements of this in part of their overall algorithms. And one of the things that was really interesting that I came across is, using Chrome and being able to use Chrome data to potentially be able to evaluate if something is a good overall content or not. Some things to potentially look at are like good clicks, which is clearly defined in some of the endpoints, as well as overall bad clicks and also last longest clicks and so on and so forth. So you can see that there potentially is a way of evaluating, or the theories behind dwell time that used to be discussed upon on is this good content or bad content is actually being measured and potentially being used in the algorithm. So how will Google continue to ensure to provide quality search results, and how will you as an SEO or a content producer make sure you're clearly creating high quality content at scale and being able to get your writers and editors to have consistency overall that is going to allow you not only to rank, but be able to churn the readers into actual potential customers for you. So in general, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to really get into how to produce high quality content through AI, right? So what we like to do is we have this content production process or framework where we've really broken it down into 7 different steps. First part is really researching on what you are going to write, and we're going to show how we do that using a tool called Surfer SEO in a little bit. How it helps overall build out a pillar and spoke strategy, and it also, in addition, allows you to write very in-depth content briefs. The next step is about brand voice and tone. We're going to show you how through custom GPTs, we're able to create not only customer personas, but quickly on top of that, be able to produce brand voice guidelines that ensures any writer that we bring onto the different project will have consistency overall for our clients' production as well as for their content needs. Next is the content generation itself. We're going to have to walk you through exactly how not only you produce good quality content, but you're able to rate it and evaluate it and edit it and eventually be able to publish it. And then lastly, we'll go through content optimization and repurposing, how you're able to take one long form content and you're able to write emails off of it, or you're able to even create videos off of it now, and so on and so forth. We'll get into a little bit about that. Technical, we're not going to get to in this webinar. We spent a ton of time talking about it in the last webinar. And then lastly, we'll discuss about how you measure all of this and you report up to your different C-level executives to ensure the content production itself is starting to work. So first, before we get into all that, here are some general categories of AI tools that you should be aware of. We will obviously share the slide deck before, but we like to break it down into content, keyword, and research. Here, predominantly where our agency likes to really use is Ahrefs and SEMrush. These have sort of become the gold standards for us in any type of research that we're doing. Then there's content generation. We've used several of these tools. The one that we've all gravitated now towards is ChatGPT. It just makes it so much easier and simpler for us, especially since with the GPTs, we've been able to enhance our overall content production cycle. Next is content optimization and repurposing. We love Grammarly here. We also love HeyGen and Surfer, Hemingway as well. And so these are great tools that we've been using overall in our content production cycle. In the SEO world, every single one of these tools are fantastic. The ones that we tend to go to for technical are Screaming Frog, as well as Majestic and Bright Edge. So these are wonderful tools in itself, and obviously Google Search Console. And then in measuring and reporting, we look at GA4 a lot. And then within that, we also look at other tools such as Mixpanel, Hotjar, and HubSpot as well when we want to see deeper funnel metrics. So all of these are relevant the tools that you might be using to help optimize. We're not going to get into every single one of these, but we wanted you guys just to be aware of them. Now, overall, what is the main content strategy? In webinar 6, we talked about what seems to be working and even reconfirmed through overall the leaks themselves, that building overall topical authority in a particular subject matter is really, really important. So what does this mean? Is that you need to not only talk about one topic, but you need to go really, really deep using what has been proven as a pillar page strategy or a pillar and spoke strategy. What we've outlined here is sort of for the fintech industry. So if you wanted to write about fintech or become a topical expert on fintech, you might want to write something around the ultimate guide to fintech marketing, AI and fintech from chatbots to predictive analytics, 15 fintech trends to watch, 99 fintech startups and companies, 8 fintech marketing agency, and the future of fintech marketing. This is obviously our pillar and spoke strategy if we wanted to go about and targeting different fintech companies and show how expert we are. There is more to this, but this gives you a general gist of it. And then you do a lot of interlinking between this content. So you might, within this article, be linking to this one and this one, as well as linking to the service page here. So this is the pillar and spoke strategy. But how do you actually take this and start streamlining it using AI? We'll get into that in a little bit. But before that, before you even do all elements of that, what's really important is the first step is to build a customer persona. So why is it important to build a customer persona? What are the things you're trying to avoid overall for your team? And one of it is generic content. If you don't have a persona, over time as you're scaling your content production needs, it becomes really unclear who you are really targeting to. And as readers go from one blog article to the next blog article, there might be a digression or they might not understand your consistency. And it clearly looks like you're not speaking to one person and you're speaking to just generally to anybody. So it's really important to build out a customer persona first and foremost, and we will show you how to do that in a little bit. The next is low engagement. So without a customer persona, because you cannot articulate and answer the real pain points of the customer, you really don't understand what they're going through. The content itself becomes of low quality in nature. The messaging becomes inconsistent, and in general, it becomes really, really inefficient. If you imagine you have 2, 3, 4, 5 writers on one particular account, it becomes really hard because each one of them would be speaking to a potentially different persona. So this is a really important first step to help scale up your content production cycle. And we'll show you how to do that with GPT in a little bit. So I talked about it will give you targeted content. It will overall improve your engagement, right? Having a persona, it will give you consistencies, and in general, it'll give you efficiency in the content cycle. This is by far one of the first steps that we do with any potential clients. So how do we actually go about doing it? So the first thing is we want to know what, and we're going to do this for fintech, and we're going to build a persona out really quickly. We want to know what already OpenAI and GPT-40 or any version of the model that you're actively using already knows about the industry. So we ask it that simple prompt, tell me about the fintech industry sector, and we let it kind of put through what it also knows so we can read and review and make sure that it makes sense. Then what we've done is we collect data. One of the data sources that we like to use is IBISWorld, which is a company out of New York. They have about 22 to 23 different analysts, and they do very specific industry reports. So we go and we find the one that is relevant to this particular industry. We download that report and we load it back up into GPT so it can quickly start learning and augmenting with much more current stats and more current data points. So it understands a little bit more and fine tunes itself to understanding exactly what you're trying to do. So then we say, read this report and learn from it. It's simple as that. Then from there, now we're able to see what else it has learned by asking it list some specific marketing needs that are most relevant to fintech companies. This will now allow us to kind of see what it knows and what it doesn't potentially know. And then from there, we have a general resulting of what the needs are, what the customer is going through, and what are potentially the pain points. So overall, now we know how we can potentially target the fintech industry, what are different reports we should be creating, what are the different strategies we should overall be looking at, and what are the different overall pain points that we should be aware of. Then we are a growth marketing agency, as simple as that, right? Specializing in marketing service. We're teaching who we are, what we do, what is the value proposition we bring to the table, and how would we go about targeting a specific customer that will allow them to be able to solve their pain points that they're particularly servicing with our product or service. That is the prompt in general that we use. And then that allows us to really get into the weeds of what the persona itself is and what aspects of we're going to be able to help. So now that we've done that, we have the persona fully created. Now we need to be able to do the next step, which is create a brand voice. And that really, before we get into that, I want to talk about why that's important. So imagine now you have 3, 4, 5 different writers, right? You have a persona, but you want to make sure that they are going to have consistent tone to the customer. So when the customer is actively reading this particular content, it starts making sense to them. It doesn't throw them off. They can relate to it, but more importantly, they can slowly start building trust with you. So if you don't do it, you'll have inconsistent messaging. You won't resonate. You won't stand out in a large pool of different marketing messages that they're being hit with. And overall, you will potentially decrease loyalty. So as we start creating the brand voice, what you start noticing is that you will have a consistent tone in all of the writing that you're doing. It will allow you to shape the overall brand identity. But more importantly, it will start building trust. So your content becomes consistent. It might be informal, straight to the point, filled with a lot of data, or whatever choice that you are making that makes your organization unique and stand out. That is going to become how you will be connecting and communicating overall with your potential customer persona. So how do we do that? I mean, it's quite simple. With one simple prompt, we're able to provide brand voice guidelines. So we say, now let's create an in-detail brand voice guidelines for this customer persona. So this now allows us to see what OpenAI generically would be producing. And then from there, we go out and we start refining it to what we want it to be and how its consistency would be overall with our brand. We could, in addition, on top of this, tell it to not use specific words. So we can say, stop using words like this, and that, meaning words that sound too AI generated, or words or emojis and so on and so forth that it tends to err towards. So it allows you to start not only building one consistent brand voice, but it allows you to start making it sound much more natural and human nature. So it lowers the overall editing cycle that your writers and editors will eventually have to do it post this. So here are the results for that. And then this now brand voice can be used consistently for everything you produce, right? It could be used for email, it could be used overall for social, it could be used overall for video creation. At this point now, you have 2 GPTs that you've created. One earlier on was the customer persona, and then now the secondary one that you've created is overall the brand voice guideline. So you have 2 different GPTs that you can use to continue producing exponential content in this particular category. So now that we've talked about that, let's now take a step back and say, okay, we have a customer persona. We now also have a brand voice. How do we actually go about and creating long form content? The reason I'm going to talk about long form content, it continues to prove out that longer form content is the content that continues to rank, right? So if you look at this, 58% of marketers companies use generative content creation report increased performance as the top benefit. We're aware of that. So we know you're here, generative AI is improving overall performance and so on and so forth. There was also a study by SEMrush that quickly showed that the longer articles are starting to rank and continue to rank so because of the depth that they go into. Also in the leak that I mentioned before, you see topical authority. So this becomes all relevant, that longer form articles that go really, really in depth become really, really important. So why is long form content winning? It drives more customer value, right? So you're able to go in depth, provide a thorough analysis, provide the full context of the argument or the information that the searcher was seeking for, and plus provide additional context if there's further things that they need to learn. And because you produce such high quality high quality content, it naturally will start garnering organic backlinks as well. And we noticed that the longer form content, particularly in awareness and consideration stage and search intent, seem to outrank overall any other short form content. Short form content still has a place, but it happens to be on much more breaking news, original thought that we've seen, that you want to summarize and analyze multiple different pieces. You can write a shorter form content that will allow you to quickly be able to get in the news or show your viewpoint or show your thought. But longer form content seems to be working for much more evergreen and complex information that is much more research intent, that you can show the beginning, middle, and the end of the context of the story or the full research done to be able to provide this. So what are some of the challenges to be able to write long form content, right? One of them is risk of digression. What do we mean by that? It's really, really hard for you to keep a reader's attention throughout a very long article. So in long article, we're defining at 1,500 to 2,000 words. So how do you continue to make sure that the reader has interest from the beginning of the article all the way down to the end, right? So it's also very resource intensive. To be able to produce tons of long form content, it's going to take some time if you don't do the research part correctly, right? If you don't use generative AI and you were doing this before, it would take us a little bit longer, not because of the content writing itself, but more importantly of the process of actually writing it, editing it, and making sure it's consistent across all of the other content that you've written, and so on and so forth. It is very hard when it comes to getting engagement off of it. How do you break it down? How do you ensure that someone who is going to be reading this long article doesn't feel overwhelmed with a lot of content blocks? How do you ensure you build some natural engagement within it through either the visuals or through ways of interacting with the content, and so on and so forth? So it also allows for, the quality itself. You can't just write 1,500 words and expect it to be a great quality. You need to be able to lay it out. You need to create the right visuals from it. You need to make it short and succinct in certain areas. You need to make the reading engaging on all elements of that. And then lastly, it's very, very time consuming, right? So all of these are given with a long form content production, and where generative AI or ChatGPT allow us to do is to shortcut through some elements of this, where it makes the writing process even more fun, because now you're just really doing more research. And on top of that, you're really playing with the layout, and how you're more playing with how does it look and how does it become much more skimmable. So what is really the process, right? So one of the biggest process is creating a solid, consistent content brief. You do that same process. You still, as a writer and editor, need to spend some time doing the research. You need to go through and you need to read what is ranking today. What are they talking about? And how are you going to be unique in the market, of not to regurgitate what they're saying, but really have original thought or be able to provide value into the conversation. On top of that, the brand voice we've already talked about. So that is easy, right? So that part is you already are going to be able to use the GPT transformer that you previously built. You don't no longer have to worry about am I following the brand guidelines. All elements of that have gone away. And so it allows you to spend more time here on the research. And the last is the requirements. What do I want to be linking to? What do I want to be using as my source? What is the actual thought that I want to get across? And what is the goal of this content piece that I'm producing when a reader actually reads it, right? Am I hoping to capture an email? Am I hoping to capture a conversion, and so on and so forth? So this becomes sort of the content brief process. And what we've done now is we've really streamlined this using another AI tool called Surfer SEO. And for those of you who don't know what Surfer SEO does, is it really speeds up the content brief production process. It allows you to quickly go and read the top 10 or the top 20 articles that are ranking for any keyword, and it will read it, it will summarize it, it will give you the word length that it sees, it will give you the headlines that it sees, it would also see the semantics. And I will show you in the next couple of slides how it does that. And in addition to that, it will give you headline suggestions that you can revise and edit. It will give you subheadings. It will give you a score that quickly measures the quality of your content, and then it will also allow you to develop your overall pillar and spoke strategy. So this tool has become another great vehicle and overall to ensure that we're producing high quality content, right? You still need to think. The tool's not going to write it for you, but it allows you and it gives you, it speeds up the research cycle. So then you can know how you can be distinct in the marketplace. So how does it do that? So you basically put in a keyword, it gives you an overall score, and it goes and it allows you to quickly go and read every single article that comes through that. And then it summarizes it for you, and it starts giving you different word count links, different headings you should be using, different paragraphs, number of images you should have. But then it more importantly, it gives you this content score. This content score allows you to basically be able to see where you rank in comparison to all the other content in that is being created by your competition, right? So once you have gone through and you have read all the 10, 15, 20 articles, why is your content better than the others? So this is the content score element of it. We try to overall make sure that we are 69% higher and better. That is the overall goal we try to do, right? So we try to get into the 80s and 90s in general. That is just our general guidelines. And how are we unique? How are we different than whatever else has been written in that era? So, and in addition to that, it gives you relevant keywords, and it measures how often you're using those keywords. So it ensures that you don't use too much financial transactions in this example, right? You should only use it 2 to 3 times. Or here, and analyzing customer data should only be used once. So it goes through and reads your own article and says where you are overusing or underusing or using just right the number of keywords themselves. And then on top of that, it allows you to really dig in and look at how many paragraphs you should have and so on and so forth. So we're going to take a quick minute break. Allow me to drink some water and ask a really quick question on polls again. So are you currently utilizing AI in content marketing strategies? If you could answer that really quick. And then have you built a custom GPT before? Great. So let's get into how to create a custom GPT. So I talked about earlier an example that I did with the customer persona. I went really, really quickly on how we built it. But more importantly, we're going to get into more custom GPT builds now. And so you guys can see and you get a better feel of how it's done, right? So what we want to really talk about here. So some of the pros, right? It allows you to build highly personalized content. We talked about that to the target audience with the personas and the brand voice. It fine-tunes the responses to meet specific industry needs. So you're no longer creating this general content. You can go deeper and deeper, actually. So you can even put the product itself in there. You can put the services itself in there. You can even talk about what makes your product very, very unique in the marketplace. In addition to that, you can start putting the founder's information in there. So it learns about that. You can also start putting in other information like your current customers, who they are, why they take your service, so even customer testimonials. In addition to that, you can start adding your actual articles you've written. So prior articles you've written, prior posts you've written. And as you continue adding all these different elements of it, you're really fine-tuning the overall assistant, your AI assistant that can start helping speed up the content production cycles for your team as a whole. You will still have a human. This is augmentation of a human, right? But it will now become better and quicker and faster. What all of these different things, if you go about doing it, it will allow you to quickly create new content and then be able to understand your whole body of work. So it will provide also suggestions and links to potential other articles that you have written. Okay, so these are the pros of creating it. So here are some examples that we've created throughout, right? So we've created an growth GPT, a fintech growth marketing one, and so on and so forth. And as you continue to create different ones, you can have access to all of these that your writers can potentially use across the account, right? And then in addition to the ones you can create, there's others in the marketplace that are out that you can use and utilize to continue augmenting it from different ones from other organizations that have been established out. Okay. So how do you actually go about doing it? It's relatively easy, right? So you go to new GPTs. Once you're in the paid account, you put different prompts. It actually prompts you throughout the different process. It even creates a logo for you. So, literally you are following step-by-step instructions throughout the process. And at the tail end of it, you have it created out. You can go from 0 to a basic GPT within 5 minutes. So we've been able to do so many throughout the process. And then where the fine tuning begins is the hard part. So where the fine tuning really is what is the data you're providing it? What is the information you want to continue adding to it and loading to it? You can do it through either a PDF document, which is the most simplest and basic form. Sometimes it doesn't read it well. It's getting better, by the way, with GPT-40. But the other version of it is through JSON files that you clearly spell out the different keys and value pairs. That does a much better job of understanding content and be able to understand exactly what you're providing. Okay. So when you do all of these, you'll at the configuration area, you'll see the knowledge area is where you are adding the different documents. So it might be the PDF documents here. The conversation starters are just the simple ways of telling people what it's really about. And then the instructions themselves are the instructions that you're writing out for the particular GPT. Once it's created and it's live, everyone within the account has access to it, so they can quickly start utilizing it and be able to go from there. Okay. So that's how you do it. It's relatively simple and easy. It should be able to take anyone 5 minutes if you haven't created it before to be able to get it up and running and have your first one out the door. Now talking about repurposive AI content. This is the latest thing that is really you get a huge benefit from by using AI is you're able to take existing articles that you've written and be able to utilize it in different ways, shapes, and forms. Some of it might be email sequences. Others of it might be ebooks that you want to create. Others could be videos potentially that you want to establish or social media posts, whatever it might be. If you take the original long form content that you produced, you can quickly slice it up and start creating other different elements of content around it. So you're no longer limited by this inability to quickly distribute your content, right? Because you can now utilize the tool properly. And at this point, you're able to create this distribution mechanism that allows you to be able to take this long form content that you wrote and now be able to share it across all the different social platforms and your own within your distribution channels to get it out into the world. So how AI is helping to it is it's expanding your content reach by converting it into multiple formats. It's keeping the content fresh and engaging by allowing you to update and repurpose it. And it's actually allowing you to like mix it, right? So you're able to, it's allowing you to distribute it across different channels and so on and so forth. Okay. How do you kind of do that? Here's an example. So once we have built a persona, you could even create ads off of it, right? So this example, this shows you us being able to create different ads to promote the content. This is now the landing page copy, right? So this allows you to create different landing page copy to be able to take the ads and drive it towards the landing page. And it allows us from there to be able to then create email sequences. So this is now the email sequences we're creating for the leads that are generated on the content that we created from the landing page, from the ads, and so on and so forth. So now you have a complete consistency across from the brand voice to the customer persona. And now from here, once we get through the email sequences, and we now also can create videos, right? So there's a new tool that we've been utilizing recently in our agency. When I say new, in the last 4 months or so, we've been getting really excited about what the future of video and being able to take the different content that we've created and start creating videos and being able to engage users on the blog itself with AI generated avatars. So why is this important is because we've noticed historically video is one of the most engaging forms of content, and it allows users to be able to click on it. It definitely stops it. It's quicker for users to be able to consume the content this way. It doesn't, they don't have to no longer read the full article. They can get a summation and then in addition to that, you can now use video to be able to promote it on Instagram or YouTube or wherever else you want to be able to promote your content as a whole, right? So we've talked about this. So how is it done? It's relatively easy to do with HeyGen. You create a video avatar of yourself or a 2-minute video. You provided some text. or you provided a summation using ChatGPT, and then this simplifies the whole process, and you get a new video created for you within 5 minutes or so as well here too. So here's some examples of us creating different videos. Some of you might have seen the video ads and joined us because of it, but here's me, right? So I shot a 2-minute video talking into the HeyGen avatar, and then our team can come in quickly and start creating the different prompts, and the prompts themselves start turning into different videos, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here's the example of it. This is how quickly you do it. So technical SEO, again, for those of you, I'm trying to be cognizant of time. We're at 11:40, so I'm not going to get into the weeds of all elements of AI and technical SEO, but so please feel free to go look at our last SEO evolution one, where we dig into all of that. So you can go and listen to and read more about the articles we produce at that time. And then now the next phase is measuring and reporting. So measuring and reporting becomes important as you start producing content to see how it actually is working. Are you starting to see it coming to fruition? Is all of this hard work and all of these resources you've put in place, is the content you're generating starting to deliver results? And so the way you kind of start doing that, if you don't do it, obviously, is SEO takes time, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It's a long duration. It can take upwards of 6 months, 9 months, if you're a brand new site, to start seeing some impressions and some traffic, upwards of 2 years in some instances before you start getting meaningful traffic. So there has to be a way for you to evaluate and see if you're headed in the right trajectory, and some different leading indicators that you can look at to ensure that the investments you've made up to this point, that it's actually going to start working and it's going to lead you down to the path, right? So the way we kind of do that is there's different tools in the marketplace, from Ahrefs, Google Search Console, and GA4. Ahrefs allows you to quickly start tracking your keywords, seeing what share of voice you have, and see how you're starting to make penetration within the particular niche you're going after. Google gives you the real raw data, right? So you start seeing the impression numbers as soon as your content starts indexing, in addition to all the technical elements of it. But more on the metric side, you see impressions and clicks and how you're progressing towards the different goals that you've set. And GA4 shows the overall content engagement metrics. This is specifically talking about content performance. All of these are really critical for you, because especially when you start getting traffic, you want to make sure on the GA4 side that the content itself is doing what you desired for. Are you getting the conversions? Are you actually getting people to read, and so on and so forth? Okay. So when we take this and we start breaking it down, these are how we would evaluate content in these particular pillars. One is leading indicators, one is content performance, and one is optimization. In leading indicators, we're looking for share of voice, we're looking for index pages, we're looking for impressions. In content performance, we're looking for bounce rate, we're looking for average time on page, we're looking for clicks, and we're looking for engagement. In optimizations, we're looking for conversion rate, we're looking for visited pages, and we're looking overall in general behavior of the audience segments that are reaching to that particular page. So first and foremost is this column. As you start seeing this occur, you will naturally then start seeing this occur, which is clicks, and then you start evaluating this element, and then eventually you go down to this path. So this is the sequence that we see overall, how it's important to start measuring your content performance. There typically is a lead time of, I would say, about 6 months when you first start getting into actually decent traffic, and then another 6 months or so, depending on the category, depending on the space, obviously, where you start breaking into that. It's easier to start winning lower difficult, long tail awareness keywords early on. Then you move into sort of like consideration stage, and then finally decision. It is really, really tough to get out of the gate and start winning the decision keywords. Okay. So how do you measure it? You use Rank Tracker inside of Ahrefs. It's one of the tabs up here. You start, adding your different keywords. You start tagging those keywords based on your pillar pages. And then over time, these are the tags. You're able to quickly go down and see how you're doing. You can see landing page agency is a low competition one that we're already starting to rank for. It's something new we recently released about 3 or 4 months ago. As we continue going after new services for our growth, scaling our agency, we're kind of showing some of the stats in our own account as well. And then here are within Google, you look at performance search results. You can see the path. You can start expanding this out from 3 months, 3 months to longer, which will show you the windows. You'll see queries, pages, and so on and so forth. Okay. So this becomes the expansion of that, and you can start seeing the different spikes. You can go deeper into now user behavior using reports and going further into that, creating audience segments, specifically breaking down organic traffic, and so on and so forth. I know I covered a lot. I want to leave about 15 minutes or so for questions. Before we do that, we do go in depth to each one of these articles each one of these concepts here that was shared. We have more than 12 or so articles. I want to provide that all to you guys in addition to infographics as well in this video. In return, I really ask just for one simple thing. We really want to know what you thought of the overall the webinar, how we can improve it. So we will be sharing a type form with you to complete. It should be in the chat now. And if you guys can complete that, that'll be great. And also as you're exiting the Zoom webinar, that'll be very helpful for us and how we can continue improving overall the Growth Lab series. Thanks for the 2,000 or so people that have already attended these and continue to come back. And thank you everyone here today that registered and attended as well. And now just opening it up for questions. All right, let me find the questions. 1 second. While I'm doing that, you can get a hold of me on LinkedIn and feel free to scan here or add me on LinkedIn and we can go from there. Let me stop screen sharing so I can find the questions. So first question was, what kind of input do you use for personas and brand voice? You use primary research like interviews and surveys or more industry reports? Great question. So primary research where your customers are fantastic source as well. If you're able to do that and you're further along in the process, but sometimes startups don't have that yet, right? So you're really out of the gate. You really don't have that many customers yet. And because of that, we tend to go to industry reports and then and not necessarily customers, but more users are what we end up using as well to be able to ask generic questions, and the mixture of the two data is what we use to be able to build out overall the personas. The brand voice really is more around how you want your brand to be represented and the consistency in that. So it's how do you want to be unique in the marketplace? How do you want to connect with them? So that becomes more of a self-selection of how you are going to stand out in the marketplace and be uniquely identifiable. Okay, so next question is from Jennifer. Effect in driving clicks and conversion. So long form. Okay. Jennifer asks, what have you found to be effective in driving clicks and conversions from SEO long form articles? So what we have seen that drives new traffic to long form articles is social. So when you first initially launch it, it's really about how do you promote it and distribute it. So the way we do that is we start right away marketing it on our social platforms. So it might be either on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. And each one of the different platforms have different ways that we market it, right? On Instagram, we might do short videos that we might grab certain elements of the long form article and highlight it and get people excited about the to learn more. Another which way we do it is on very short LinkedIn posts, or we also obviously use email to promote it and so on and so forth. So we go through different formats of doing this. And in addition to that, we start using interlinking within our site to quickly drive from existing pages that have decent amount of traffic over to the new content itself. We want to quickly be able to get a gauge if this new content is going to perform, how well it's going to perform, and if there's anything we need to be able to do to change it. On top of that, we will do boosted posts to drive specific traffic over to the page itself as well for that same exact reason. Is the content itself interesting enough or unique enough? Anything new that we're launching, we're also looking at smart look videos right away. We're seeing how people are engaging with it, where they're stopping, what do we need to do in addition to be able to get the desired action. I hope that answered your question, Jennifer. So question from Evan. At what MRR do you recommend building out growth pipelines like the ones you showed today versus having one writer? Evan, wonderful question. So if you're a brand new startup, brand new, SEO is not going to give you the immediate returns, but content will. So meaning the content production that you are going to be doing, if you're a SaaS startup, you're going to have to produce content. You're going to have to establish yourself as an authority. If you're a fintech, you're going to have to do the same, right? So you are going to need a mechanism that allows you to produce content, at least get the consideration and decision content out the door so you can move people down the funnel. But when it comes to scaling long-term content, what we really recommend is to have your first growth engine really working. So spending time and figuring out what that mechanism is going to be. And then from there, once you have that going, then investing into something like SEO and really long-form content production that over time can bring down your CAC. One example is a restaurant tech startup that we had that early on started light with content production, but started heavy in paid ads. And now what's happened 2 years into it, they have reduced CAC and payback period to a point where they're getting about a 4.5% payback period, 4.5 month payback period, which is substantial and incredible for their category. And partly because they have such a strong SEO that is allowing their brand overall to start picking up more and more traffic. So you got to look at content scaled production as a long-term play, and you got to look for content that helps move users down the funnel as the first batch that you tackle. The next question is from Noah. How do you avoid sounding too similar to other brands when building your GPT prompts? So Noah, this is why the part of it is using negations. So what we try to do is we try to use a lot of different negations and say, don't say this, don't use those words, don't speak in this tone, and so on and so forth is one element of it. The other element of it is the content that you're proud of. So the things that you've written that you actually like, load that as well too. So what I mean by that is here's content that you produce. It might be social posts, it might be LinkedIn posts, it might be other articles that you've written. All of those elements of it, when you convert it and load it up and you say, please make sure you sound like this, or what is this content that I'm providing you? What is the voice? What is the tone it's using? It allows you to see what it understands and what you need to, in addition, to be able to refine off of that. Okay. Natasha, does Surfer SEO also help with writing headlines for meta ads, or is it exclusive for organic content? No, Natasha, it's really designed for, it doesn't really help you write the headlines, by the way, Natasha, just to clarify that. It's more of a research assistant. So it's your editorial assistant. It allows you to create the content brief. And it gives you suggestions of what everybody else is using, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what you should be using. So obviously you, as the authority of the brand or understanding what the overall strategies that you want to implement and who you're trying to take it, but it does speed up the research, and it allows you to quickly see how you can be unique. But it also allows you to it also tells you what you need to do to have authoritative content in this space. I hope that answered your questions. But for headlines specifically, what we like to use is obviously once you built the GPT out in OpenAI and be able to, and your customer persona, start with the landing page first, create the landing page, and then work backwards. So once you have the landing page, then go back and say, okay, give me ads for Google or give me ads for Facebook. And then it'll give you a variety of headlines and text. It'll be off, by the way, because it doesn't know the text requirements. So you need to give that specificity in the code. You'll say, I need a headline of 30 words, and I need a description of 80 characters or whatever, 30 characters and 80 characters. And then you need to iterate through that is one element. The other thing that we've done, and we didn't provide it in this particular one, is you can load up prior headlines and prior descriptions that have performed well. So either in a CSV format or as well as in a JSON, or even, so if you load your prior ads, it will analyze it and it will try to find why it's performing well and come up with ideas around that. But great question. So Noah asked, My company has very limited traffic on any platforms. We get about 500 visitors to our website a week. How would you suggest building from ground up? Great question, Noah. This is exactly what we deal with most startups that are starting out. And what you need to do is you need to tackle what I consider the low difficulty keywords or the long form content first. Even though you're going to do a pillar and spoke strategy, you need to go really, really, really in depth on some of the low difficulty keywords as you discover them. So these are typically keyword difficulties of 15 or below, and tackling that group first and winning in that group and going in depth within that. So once you've been able to pull that off, then you can slowly start building it up. You still do need to create all the content around it, though. You can't just survive on just that one article focused around it, but you can try to go deeper and deeper within that topic matter, become a topic matter expert within that specific niche within the niche, and then build around that. So next question from Natasha again. What would be the top 5 tools you would recommend for scaling content research and production for small businesses? Surface SEO, Ahrefs are number 1 and number 2 for research. And then in addition to that, SEMrush can also be helpful. So we would add that as well for just the general on the content research side. Those 3 should be more than enough for a small business to kind of learn from. Okay. Any persona analysis-based AI solutions you may know? I'm not quite sure what you mean by the question. Is it for it to be able to read and understand the content itself? If that's what the question is around, Megan, we've noticed that OpenAI is able to do that. So what I mean by that is, one example is we wanted to do construction tech, which is one of our clients. We wanted to understand who the best writers in the industry were and what tone and style they used. And we wanted to ensure that we knew that our target audience would read their articles a lot. So we knew that they were following these writers. We knew they were consuming their content. So what we did is we basically went and downloaded most of their content that they had written prior, right? So we did print PDFs, as simple as that when I say downloaded. And we grabbed some of the more popular articles that they had, and we loaded that into the GPT, and we asked it to tell us a little bit more about this author and what is the style and the tone that this author typically used to be able to communicate, and who is the persona that it writes to. And it was able, through that, be able to figure out exactly what we were trying to do. So I don't know if that was the question you're asking, but if I answered incorrectly, feel free to let me know specifically what you were looking for, and I can answer more. Daniel Kim asked, have you worked at all with chatbots? And if so, what kind of use cases and customer personas do you see for it? We have worked with chatbots. So what we've done, which was an interesting version for a chatbot, was we used it as being able to answer any frequently asked questions that would come in customer service, particularly for it. So what we did is we loaded up all of the general FAQs and all of the general information that was always being asked different customer service reps. And we front loaded and pre-trained the chatbot on that. And this allowed them to be able to go in the front lines. It was clear that it was a chatbot, by the way. So it's not like we hid it, but we said, this is a chatbot. Feel free to ask it any specific questions. It allowed the user to be able to quickly answer. Some users try to go outside of the questions, obviously, and play with it. And we refined it, and we didn't let it go outside of the context of the knowledge base that it knew. All right. Thank you. Another question. I'm seeing different takes on best practices around post frequency. I've anecdotally heard that daily is the best practice, but I also have seen research that it won't make a meaningful difference after 2 posts per week. What is your take on this? It really depends, and I know you don't want to hear that answer, but it really depends on the category and the industry that you are on, and where you are in overall your content production. Right. So when we were working with large publishers, so these were big media publishing companies who need to be posting more. So that, they had to write 3 or 4 or 5 articles, but they were short. But these articles were newsworthy and the news would come in and go. So there's one space of that ilk. But if it's more long form content and you're a brand new startup, the reality is that Google's not going to crawl you that often. So you're not going to get crawled. All of your content is not necessarily going to get consumed. So what you really need to do is launch content in a large, meaningful way, and then have that all get indexed together. So this is where the pillar and spoke becomes really helpful, is you might say, here's the one topic that I'm